The cry had long faded when dawn spilled across the canyon, but the welts, they still stung. Leela lay on the dirt near a parched stream, her breathing faint, her cheeks smudged with grime and tears from the night before. Call had struck her so fiercely her vision blurred. He'd snatched her satchel, her last coins, her mare, even her shoes. Her belly had been hollow for days, her mouth dry as ash. Then he spat near her and galloped off, his laughter fading into the night. When morning broke, the breeze was sharp, the sun relentless. Leela dragged herself toward a faint outline in the distance, half covered by sand, an old shack, deserted, with shattered windows and a sagging roof. Maybe it could shield her from the heat or the weight of still breathing. She'd stopped praying hours ago, but a piece of her clung to hope that someone might come. She stumbled through the doorway, her legs shaking. The place reeked of weathered timber and ghosts, a dust-coated table, a bed frame stripped bare. The quiet, it was so heavy it pressed against her ears. She sank to her knees, gripping her stomach as hunger clawed inside. Murmurs slipped from her lips. I can't keep this in anymore. God, please, I can't. Her forehead met the floorboards, and for the first time she wished she wouldn't wake again. But destiny, it wasn't done with her yet. Later that morning, a shadow fell across the threshold. A tall figure stepped in, brushing sand from a faded jacket. His beard was silver, his hands calloused, his eyes heavy, with years of buried sorrow. Jonah Reed hadn't set foot in this shack for over a decade. Every plank still carried his wife's screams, every nail held a fragment of what he'd lost. It was where she died, giving birth. He'd come today only because he'd finally mustered the nerve to face that door again. What he found wasn't a ghost, it was a living woman, broken, trembling. He froze. The sight yanked him back to memories he'd tried to bury. Leela flinched when she saw him, her voice breaking. Please, don't harm me. Jonah knelt, his voice soft. I ain't here to hurt you, ma'am. She tried to rise, but her legs gave out. Tears carved paths down her bruised face, her words choked with sobs. Please help me. I'll do anything. You can have me if you want. Just don't let me die here. Jonah's jaw clenched. He'd seen desperation before, but not like this. He pulled a flask from his belt, twisted off the cap, and held it to her lips. Drink first, he said. Water dribbled down her chin as she gulped like a starved creature. He waited until she was done, then glanced around the shack. This place ain't safe. Wolves'll find you by nightfall. Leela shook her head faintly. I don't care. I got nowhere else. Jonah sighed, his eyes lingering on the walls that once held his wife's voice. Now they echoed with a stranger's broken murmurs. He extended his hand. Come on, you ain't dying here today. She hesitated, her body quivering. Why? Why are you helping me? He didn't answer right away. Sometimes words, they can't carry the weight of why a man does what's right. 'Cause no one helped her when she needed it, he said finally. She didn't know who her was, but his eyes held a grief deep enough to sink in. He lifted her gently, set her on his horse, and started the slow ride back across the flats behind them. The shack stood silent again, guarding its secrets. As the wind picked up, Lila glanced at the man beside her and wondered, had she just been spared from death, or was she stepping into a tale she'd never break free from? The ride back was slow, hushed. Lila's head rested against the saddle, her eyes barely open. Every jolt on the trail drew a faint sound from her throat. Jonah kept his eyes on the path. The morning sun sliced through the dust, casting long shadows across the plains. He hadn't brought anyone to his homestead since his wife passed. The idea of another voice in that house? It felt odd. But leaving the girl to die, that felt worse. By the time they reached his cabin, the sun blazed high and harsh. The house looked small against the vast land. A few fences, a lone barn, a windmill creaking with every turn. He lifted Lila off the horse and carried her inside. She was lighter than she seemed, her skin hot with fever. He laid her on the bed and poured water into a tin mug. "Drink some," he said. She nodded weakly, her hands trembling. Jonah draped a blanket over her and turned to light the stove. The room smelled of smoke and aged cedar. He cooked a small pot of broth, simple, slow. The scent filled the cabin, warm, human, something the place hadn't known in years. When he offered it to her, she stared with wide, wary eyes. "You don't owe me nothin'," he said quietly. "I ain't that kind of man." Her lips parted, confused. "I just thought, folks don't help for free out here." Jonah gave a weary half-smile. "You'll work when you're steady again. Maybe cook, maybe patch a few shirts. That's fair." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, the wind howled across the plains. Jonah sat by the fire, mending an old bridle. From the bed came the sound of steady breathing. For the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. Lila woke past midnight. She saw him dozing in the chair by the door, his hat tilted low. Something about that quiet figure made her chest tighten. No one had ever protected her without wanting something back. It scared her, more than the darkness ever had. When morning came, the air smelled of coffee and rain. Jonah handed her a mug, his voice steady. "You're safe here, Lila. Do your part, and you stay as long as you need." She nodded, clutching the mug with both hands, her eyes on the floor. But deep inside, something stirred. Not just hunger or fear, but trust. Small, fragile, like the first spark in a cold hearth. And Jonah, though he didn't say it, felt that same spark flicker in him too. Outside, the windmill turned slowly. The land was quiet again. But quiet, it never lasted long in Nevada, because somewhere out there, someone had heard Lila was still alive, and he was already riding back. 3 days later, Lila could walk steady again. The bruises had softened, but her spirit still felt frail. Jonah said he needed supplies, so he hitched the wagon and told her to come along. "It'll do you good to see people again," he said. She nodded, though her gut churned at the thought of facing strangers. The town was small, dusty, buzzing with chatter. Every window seemed to hold a face, watching, judging. Horses clopped on the boards, and the scent of coffee mixed with dry grass. Jonah headed to the mercantile, while Lila trailed, holding the list he'd given her. For a moment, it felt calm. Then a voice, one she'd thought she'd never hear again, slithered through the air like a rattler. "Well, look who we got here." Cole smirked from across the street, his grin twisted, his eyes cruel. "Didn't think you'd drag yourself this far, girl." Lila froze, her body recalling the pain before her mind did. Jonah turned, seeing her face drain of color. She stepped forward, her voice trembling with anger. "You stole my money. You left me to die." People paused to stare. Cole laughed. "Money? That was mine, sweetheart. You took my purse while I was sleeping." The crowd believed him before she could even catch her breath. A man spat near her feet. In a place like this, a woman's story unraveled fast. Cole stepped closer. "Want to give it back, or should I take it out of your hide?" He raised his hand. Before the slap could land, Jonah's arm caught his wrist mid-air. "That's enough," Jonah said, his voice low but solid. Cole tried to pull free, but Jonah's grip held firm. "You got no proof, old man," Cole snapped. Jonah's eyes narrowed. "I got enough." For a moment, the whole street went still. The sheriff appeared at the corner, boots crunching. "Let him go, Reed." Jonah released him, slow, deliberate. The sheriff eyed Lila, then Cole. "2 stories, no proof."
he sighed. "Both of you, settle down. No more trouble in my town." Cole smirked. "Hear that, old man? Keep your strays at home." He sauntered off, laughing, but his eyes burned with hate. Jonah turned to Leela. "You all right?" She nodded, her lip quivering, but she saw something shift in Jonah's face. He wasn't angry for himself. He was angry for her. They climbed back into the wagon. The ride home felt longer than before. Neither spoke, but both knew this wasn't over. Some men don't let go, especially when they're humiliated in front of a crowd. And sure enough, that night, a shadow lingered beyond the fence, watching the cabin's light flicker in the wind. So, if you're still with me, pour yourself a warm mug of tea. Tell me where you're sitting tonight and what time it is there. And if you want to ride with me again through these rugged western nights, hit that subscribe button, friend, because Leela and Jonah's story, it's just getting started. The wind was strange that night. Too still, too cold for summer. Jonah felt it first, that old instinct that trouble was coming. He knew men like Cole. They never stopped. Leela was inside the cabin, patching a torn shirt by lamplight. Jonah stepped out to check the horses when he heard it. Footsteps, then a faint creak of a saddle. Two shadows moved near the fence. He blew out the lamp, letting darkness settle. The moonlight was thin, but enough to catch the glint of steel. A blade, then another. Cole's voice cut through, low, vicious. "Come out, old man. I just want what's mine." Jonah stayed silent. He grabbed the rifle from the porch and eased forward, boots quiet in the dirt. The second man kicked the gate open. "Don't make this hard. Hand over the girl and maybe we'll let you keep breathing." The words burned through the night. Inside, Leela froze, her hands shaking on the needle. She peeked through the window and saw Jonah standing tall, rifle steady. The sight of him, calm, unyielding against the dark, made her heart twist. Cole spat. "You're gonna shoot me, Reed, over some lying thief?" Jonah's voice stayed low. "Step 1 foot closer and we'll find out." Then it all happened fast. Cole lunged, his knife flashing in the moonlight. Jonah swung the rifle, catching him in the ribs. The blade grazed Jonah's sleeve, drawing blood, but he didn't flinch. The second man charged from the side, yelling. Jonah turned, using the rifle like a club, cracking it across the man's jaw. He dropped, dazed. Cole came again. Jonah grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and the knife fell to the dirt. Jonah snatched a rope from the fence and tied Cole's hands tight, his breath heavy, eyes fierce. The noise drew neighbors from across the field. Someone shouted that the sheriff was coming. Cole cursed, thrashing, but Jonah stood over him, his shirt torn, blood dripping from his arm, his voice steady. "Next time you come for her, bring a coffin."
The sheriff arrived minutes later, seeing the knives, the bruises, the witnesses. Cole was hauled up, cursing all the way. The lawman gave Jonah a long look. "Good work keeping her safe, Reed. Rest that arm." When the crowd cleared, only the windmill's creak remained. Leela stepped out from the doorway, her eyes wide, tears glinting in the dim light. "You could have let them take me," she whispered. Jonah shook his head. "Not my way." She smiled through her tears. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the dark. But as dawn crept over the horizon, Jonah knew peace didn't last long in these parts, and what he'd done tonight, it would change everything between them. The morning after the fight, the homestead was quiet again. The ground still bore the marks of the struggle, but the danger had passed. Jonah sat on the porch, his arm bandaged, staring out at the open plains. The air smelled of dust and damp grass after a long night of fear. Leela brought him coffee, her hand steady now. He looked at her and gave a small smile. "Guess I made a mess of the place." She smiled back. "Guess you did. But you saved me again." He shook his head. "I didn't save you, Leela. You saved yourself. I just gave you a chance to stand." The words lingered with her all morning as the sun rose higher. She swept the porch, fed the horses, and hung washed sheets on the line. Her first real work since arriving. She felt like she belonged. Later that afternoon,
Jonah took her back to the old shack where he'd found her. The door still hung crooked, the floor scarred by time. He stood in silence, his hand brushing the wall. "This was my wife's place," he said softly. "Couldn't come here for years, but when I saw you that morning, I thought maybe it was time to stop running from ghosts." Leela's eyes brimmed with tears. "I thought I was just trying to survive," she said. "Turns out I was looking for a place where someone would see me as more than what I lost." Jonah turned to her, his voice low. "Well, you're seen now. You're home." The weeks passed. Together they mended fences, planted a small garden, and fixed the shack's roof. Laughter began to replace silence. Every scar, every broken plank became part of something new. At dusk, Jonah would sit watching the plains glow golden in the fading light. He'd see Leela moving through the barn, strong, sure, and think how strange life was. You can lose it all and still find something worth living for, if you just keep going. And maybe that's the lesson of this land. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just choosing to rise again, to believe again, to care again. So tell me, friend, where are you tonight? Are you by a window or out on your porch under the stars? Grab a mug of tea, lean back, and breathe. If this story hit you, give it a like. It means more than you know. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so we can keep riding through the wild Nevada nights together, one tale at a time. 'Cause out there, beyond the dust and wind, there's always another story waiting. And maybe, just maybe, it's yours.